The sky above New Haven turned dark at noon. Jai-Ho Park stopped working in his wheat field and looked up. His hands were covered in dirt from planting seeds. The darkness was not from clouds. It was from ships, alien ships. Hundreds of them filled the sky like a swarm of metal insects. Jai-Ho's heart began to beat faster. He had seen ships like these before, many years ago when he was a soldier. These were warships. They belonged to the Velnar Empire. The Velnar were conquerors. They took planets and destroyed anyone who resisted. Jai-Ho had hoped they would never come to New Haven. The colony was small and far from everything. Only 3,000 humans lived here. But hope was not enough. He ran toward his house. The wooden structure sat at the edge of the farmland, surrounded by tall grass that moved in the wind. Inside, his 3 children were doing their lessons. Hannah, his oldest daughter, was 12 years old. She had her mother's dark eyes and serious face. She was teaching math to her younger brother Minho, who was 8. The boy had trouble sitting still and kept looking out the window. Little Suji, only 4 years old, was drawing pictures with colored pencils on the floor. She hummed a song while she worked. "Papa!" Suji jumped up when Jai-Ho entered. She ran to him with her arms wide. He picked her up and held her tight. His hands left dirt marks on her yellow dress, but he did not care. "Hannah, pack bags for everyone," Jai-Ho said. His voice was calm, but his daughter knew him well. She saw the fear in his eyes. "What's wrong?" Hannah stood up quickly. Minho stopped fidgeting and stared at his father. "We need to leave. Now." Jai-Ho set Suji down and moved to the storage closet. He pulled out an old military backpack. Inside were emergency supplies he had prepared years ago. Food packets, water purification tablets, a medical kit, and a small pulse pistol with 2 charge packs. He had hoped he would never need these things again. Outside, the colonial alarm began to sound. It was a long, terrible wail that echoed across the valley. Other families would be gathering in the town center now. The colonial governor would try to negotiate with the Velnar. Jai-Ho knew it would not work. The Velnar did not negotiate with humans. They gave orders and expected obedience. "Papa, I'm scared," Minho said. His voice was small. Jai-Ho knelt down in front of his son. He put his hands on the boy's shoulders. "I know, but we have practiced for this. Remember the emergency drills? We are going to the mountain caves just like we practiced. You need to be brave for your sisters." Minho nodded, but tears filled his eyes. Hannah was already stuffing clothes into a bag. She moved quickly and did not waste time. She was so much like her mother. Yuna would have been proud. The thought of his dead wife made Jai-Ho's chest hurt, but he pushed the pain away. There was no time for grief now. "Can I bring my rabbit?" Suji held up a stuffed toy. It was old and worn, with one ear hanging by a thread. "Yes, baby. Bring your rabbit." Jai-Ho grabbed another bag and filled it with more food. He added blankets and a fire starter. The caves would be cold at night. Through the window, he could see his neighbors running. The Velnar ships were landing now. Massive vessels that crushed the wheat fields beneath them. Dust rose in huge clouds. The ground shook with each landing. Jai-Ho counted 6 ships within view. There would be more beyond the hills. The family left through the back door. Jai-Ho carried Suji on his back. Hannah and Minho each carried a bag. They moved quickly through the tall grass, heading away from town toward the mountains. The peaks rose in the distance, dark and jagged against the sky. Jai-Ho had explored those mountains when he first arrived on New Haven. He knew the caves and hidden paths. That knowledge might save his children's lives. Behind them, the sounds of the colony changed. The alarm stopped. Instead, there were voices. Loud voices speaking in the clicking, harsh language of the Velnar. Then there was the voice of Governor Tae-hyun on the colony's speaker system. He was trying to sound calm. "Citizens of New Haven," the governor said, "we have visitors from the Velnar Empire. They request our cooperation in a peaceful transition. Please gather in the town center for further instructions. Do not panic. This is not an invasion. They simply wish to include our colony in their protective network. Jiho almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. Protective network. That was what the Velnar called their empire now. They had learned that humans responded better to gentle words, even when those words were lies. But Jiho had studied the Velnar during his military service. He had read the reports from other colonies. He knew what peaceful transition meant. It meant slavery or death, or both. They reached the tree line and entered the forest. The tall pines provided cover from the ships above. Jiho set Suji down, and they all walked faster. The girl was breathing hard but did not complain. Hana held her hand and helped her over the rocks. "How far to the caves?" Hana asked. 3 hours if we keep moving, Jiho said. "We will rest when we get there." Minho looked back toward their home. "What about our house? What about my books?" "We will come back for them," Jiho lied. He knew they would probably never see their home again. The Velnar would take everything. But children needed hope, even if that hope was false. They climbed higher into the mountains. The air grew colder. Jiho checked behind them often, looking for pursuit. The Velnar would send scouts soon. They would search for anyone who did not report to the town center. People like Jiho, who had military training. People who might cause trouble. The sun began to set. The sky turned orange and purple. It would have been beautiful if not for the dark shapes of Velnar ships crossing in front of the colors. Suji fell asleep on Jiho's back, her small arms wrapped around his neck. Her breath was warm against his ear. Minho stumbled from exhaustion, but he kept walking. Hana stayed alert, her eyes moving constantly, watching for danger like a young soldier. Finally, they reached the cave entrance. It was hidden behind a waterfall, just as Jiho remembered. The sound of rushing water covered any noise they made. Inside, the cave was dark and cold, but it was safe. For now. Jiho laid Suji on a blanket. He gave Hana and Minho food packets and water. They ate in silence, too tired to talk. Outside, the last light faded from the sky. The Velnar ships lit up the darkness with searchlights. They were hunting already. Jiho sat at the cave entrance and watched the lights sweep across the valley below. He held his pulse pistol in his hand. It felt familiar, like greeting an old friend he had hoped never to see again. 2 charge packs, maybe 60 shots total. Not enough to fight an army, but enough to protect his children for a little while longer. That would have to be enough. Kira stood on the bridge of the warship and looked at the primitive planet below. New Haven. The humans had given it such a hopeful name. She did not understand why humans always chose emotional names for their colonies. Her people used numbers and coordinates. It was more efficient. "Commander Kira, the initial sweep is complete," said her second officer. His name was Vektar. He was young for a Velnar warrior, only 10 cycles of service. But he followed orders perfectly, which was all that mattered. 2,700 humans have gathered in the settlement center. 300 are unaccounted for. "Find them," Kira said. Her voice was flat and emotionless. She had trained for 15 years to remove all feeling from her speech. Emotion was weakness. The Velnar did not accept weakness. Kira walked to the display screen. It showed thermal images of the planet's surface. Most of the heat signatures were clustered in the town, but there were scattered dots moving away from the settlement. Runners, cowards who chose to hide instead of accepting their fate with dignity. One signature interested her. It was moving toward the mountains with unusual purpose. The thermal pattern showed 1 large human and 3 smaller ones, an adult with offspring. Kira pulled up the identification records. The colony database was simple to access. Humans had weak security protocols. "Jiho Park," she read aloud. Former Earth Defense Force, combat engineer, age 34, 3 offspring, wife deceased. Vectar moved beside her. A military human. He could organize resistance. Yes, Kira agreed. She studied the file more carefully. Jiho Park had been a promising soldier. He had served for 10 years and earned multiple commendations for tactical thinking. But then he had resigned. The reason listed in his file made Kira's eyes narrow with confusion. He left the military to raise his children personally. This made no sense. Why would a capable warrior abandon his purpose to care for offspring? The Velnar removed offspring from genetic donors at birth. The young were raised in state creches where they were fed, educated, and trained for their assigned roles. It was efficient. It removed the chaos of emotional attachment. It produced perfect warriors like Kira. "Shall we send a squad to intercept?" Vectar asked. "No," Kira said. "I will handle this one personally." Vectar's eyes widened slightly. It was the closest a trained Velnar warrior came to showing surprise. "Commander, is that necessary? He is one human with small offspring. Any soldier could—" "He has military training," Kira interrupted. "He knows tactics. If he reaches the mountains, he could hide for weeks and inspire others to resist. I will eliminate him quickly and efficiently. It will send a message to the other humans." This was true, but it was not the complete truth. Kira did not tell Vectar about her real interest. She wanted to understand this human who gave up power and purpose for offspring. It was alien to her. She had spent her entire existence following the Velnar way. Serve the Empire. Obey orders. Suppress all personal desires. She had never questioned this path. But lately, during the quiet moments between missions, strange thoughts entered her mind. She wondered what her genetic donors looked like. She wondered if they ever thought about the offspring they created and never touched. She wondered what it felt like to choose something other than duty. These were dangerous thoughts. Forbidden thoughts. Kira pushed them away and focused on the mission. She gathered her hunting squad. 6 warriors, all perfectly trained. They wore light armor for quick movement through rough terrain. Each carried a pulse rifle and an energy blade. The blades were Velnar tradition. Technology could fail, but a sharp edge was forever reliable. They descended to the planet in a small transport. The ship landed near the forest edge. The human's thermal signature was 3 hours ahead, moving steadily toward the mountains. Kira examined the tracks. 1 adult male, size and weight consistent with Jiho Park. 3 smaller sets of footprints. The children were slowing him down. He would be easy to catch. "Spread formation," Kira ordered. "Track and surround. I want him alive long enough to question." They moved through the forest like ghosts. Velnar warriors were trained to hunt from the age of 5. They learned to move silently, to read terrain, to predict prey behavior. The humans left obvious signs: broken branches, disturbed soil. Even a child could follow such a trail. But as they climbed higher, Kira noticed something. The trail became less obvious. Jiho Park was covering his tracks better now. He was using old military techniques, leading them through streams to hide footprints, doubling back to confuse the direction. He was good. Night fell. The temperature dropped. Kira's squad spread out to cover more ground. They used thermal scanners to search the caves and rock formations. For 3 days they hunted. For 3 days the humans stayed ahead of them. Kira began to feel something unfamiliar. Not quite respect, because humans did not deserve respect, but perhaps acknowledgement. This Jiho Park was a worthy opponent. He used the terrain well. He knew when to hide and when to move. He protected his offspring while staying ahead of trained hunters. On the 3rd night, they almost caught him. Kira's scout found fresh tracks near a river. The human had crossed recently. The squad moved quickly to surround the area. They found a small camp, a fire pit, still warm, food wrappers, but no humans. "He knew we were coming," Vectar said. "He left this camp as a decoy." Kira examined the site. Yes, it was a decoy, but look at how it was arranged. The fire pit was positioned to be seen from a distance. The food wrappers were scattered, obviously. Jiho Park wanted them to find this place. He wanted them to waste time searching the area. While they did, he moved his children to safety elsewhere. "He is protecting them," Kira said quietly. "Commander?" Vectar looked at her with confusion. "Nothing. Continue the search." Kira stood and looked toward the mountains. Somewhere up there, a human father was running with 3 small offspring. He was exhausted, probably injured, certainly low on supplies. Any rational being would abandon the offspring and escape alone. It would guarantee survival. But Jiho Park did not abandon them. He sacrificed speed, safety, and tactical advantage to keep 3 small humans with him. It made no strategic sense, and yet something about it disturbed Kira's carefully trained mind. She thought about the Velnar creches, the cold rooms where offspring were fed by machines, the absence of touch, of warmth, of any connection beyond duty. She had never questioned this system before, but now she wondered, what if the humans were not weak for maintaining family bonds? What if they understood something the Velnar had forgotten? Kira shook her head sharply. These thoughts were useless. Dangerous. She was a warrior. She had a mission. Find Jiho Park. Eliminate him. Eliminate the offspring if they interfered. Report success to the Empire. Simple, clean, efficient. So why did her hand tremble slightly when she thought about the small footprints in the mud? Why did she hesitate when she imagined 3 young humans watching their father die? "Commander, we have located their position," Vectar reported. "A cave system near the North Ridge. The thermal signatures match. All 4 targets are inside." "Good," Kira said. She checked her energy blade. The weapon hummed to life, glowing blue in the darkness. "I will go alone. Surround the area but do not approach. If the targets escape, you are authorized to eliminate them." "Understood, Commander." Kira moved toward the cave. Dawn was approaching. The sky was turning gray. This would end soon. The human father would die. The offspring would die. The mission would be complete. Kira would return to her ship and receive her next assignment. Everything would continue as it always had. Perfect. Efficient. Empty. She pushed the last thought away and climbed toward the cave where Jiho Park waited with his children. Jiho woke to the sound of his daughter whimpering. Hana sat near the cave entrance with her arms wrapped around her knees. She was trying not to cry, but tears ran down her face anyway. She was only 12. Too young to carry this fear. "Hey," Jiho whispered. He moved to sit beside her. "What's wrong?" "I'm sorry," Hana said. Her voice broke. "I'm trying to be brave like you said, but I keep thinking about Mama, and I'm scared we're going to die like she did." Jiho pulled his daughter close. She buried her face in his shoulder and finally let herself sob. Her whole body shook with the force of it. Jiho stroked her hair and let her cry. There were no words that could make this better. He could only hold her and hope that was enough. Yuna had died from a simple infection. On Earth, she would have lived. But New Haven did not have the medicine she needed. Jiho had held his wife's hand while the fever took her. He had promised her that he would keep their children safe. Now the Velnar were hunting them, and he did not know if he could keep that promise. "Listen to me," Jiho said when Hana's crying slowed. "Your mother was the strongest person I ever knew. You have her strength. I see it every day. The way you take care of your brother and sister. The way you keep going even when you're scared. That's not pretending to be brave. That's real courage." Hana wiped her eyes. "Really? Really?" Jiho kissed the top of her head. "Now try to sleep a little more. We have a long day ahead." But sleep did not come. 2 hours later, Jiho spotted movement below their cave. His military training saved them. He saw the glint of armor through the trees. Velnar scouts, at least 4 of them, maybe more. "Pack everything. Now," Jiho said quietly. "We need to move." Hana woke Minho and Suji. The little girl was confused and cranky. She wanted breakfast. She wanted her bed at home. Minho was crying silently, tears streaming down his face, but he helped pack anyway. They had maybe 10 minutes before the scouts reached the cave. Jiho led them out through a narrow crack in the back of the cave. He had found this exit 2 days ago while exploring. It opened onto a steep slope covered in loose rocks. Dangerous but hidden from view below, they climbed carefully. Suji rode on Jiho's back again. She was getting heavier, or maybe he was just getting weaker. He had not eaten enough. He was saving the food for his children. Behind them, he heard the Velnar enter the cave. There were harsh clicking sounds, their language, then silence. They had discovered the cave was empty. Soon they would find the back exit, and the chase would begin again. Jiho pushed his children faster. They scrambled up the slope, sending small rocks tumbling down. At the top was another forest, thick pine trees that would provide cover. But the trees also made it easy to get lost. Jiho had to be careful. One wrong turn, and they could walk in circles until the Velnar caught them. They moved through the forest for hours. Every sound made them freeze. A bird taking flight, a branch cracking, the wind moving through the trees. Everything sounded like danger. Minho kept looking back with terrified eyes. Hana held Suji's hand so tight that the little girl complained. By midday, they reached a river. The water was fast and cold, fed by mountain snow. Jiho knew this was good. The water would hide their scent and tracks. But crossing would be dangerous with the children. "Hold hands," Jiho ordered. "Stay together. If anyone falls, the others hold on tight, understand?" They nodded. Jiho led them into the water. It was freezing. Suji gasped when it reached her waist. The current was stronger than Jiho expected. He had to brace himself against the rocks to stay upright. Hana struggled to keep Suji above water. Minho slipped once and went under, but Hana caught him and pulled him up. They were halfway across when Jiho heard the sound of engines. He looked up and saw a Velnar scout ship flying low over the trees. Searching. He pulled his children under an overhanging rock. The water pressed against them. Suji was shaking from the cold, her lips turning blue. The ship passed overhead. Jiho held his breath. The scanner swept across the river, but the rock protected them. After a long minute, the ship moved on. Jiho waited until the sound faded completely, then they finished crossing. On the far bank, Jiho quickly removed the children's wet clothes and wrapped them in the emergency blankets from his pack. They were shivering so hard they could barely stand. He knew they needed a fire, but fire would give away their position. Instead, he held them close and used his own body heat to warm them. "I'm cold, Papa," Suji whispered. "Can we go home now?" "Soon, baby," Jiho lied. "Soon." That night, they found shelter in a hollow tree. It was cramped, but it protected them from the wind. Jiho gave each child half a food packet and a small cup of water. It was not enough. He knew they were all losing weight. Their faces looked thinner every day, but the supplies were running out. While his children slept, Jiho kept watch. His pulse pistol rested in his lap. He checked the charge pack. One pack was empty. The other was at 60%. He had maybe 40 shots left. Against trained Velnar warriors with advanced armor and weapons, 40 shots meant nothing. Jiho thought about his options. He could try to reach the other side of the mountains. Maybe there was another settlement there. Maybe they had a ship that could take refugees off-world. But that was 3 days of hard travel, maybe more with children. They did not have enough food or water, and the Velnar would catch them before they made it halfway. He could surrender, walk back to the colony and hope for mercy. But the Velnar did not show mercy to humans with military training. They would execute him as a threat. And his children? He did not know what they would do to his children. He could not risk it. That left only one option: fight. Find a way to eliminate the Velnar hunting squad. It seemed impossible, but Jiho had learned something during his military service. Impossible just meant difficult. It meant you had to think harder and take bigger risks. The Velnar were tracking them by thermal signature. Jiho needed to hide that signature. He needed to create false trails, lead them in circles, exhaust them, make them make mistakes. It was a long shot, but it was something. Over the next 2 days, Jiho became a ghost. He moved his children before dawn and after dark. During the day, they hid in cold caves where thermal scanners could not detect them. He left false camps to waste the Velnar's time. He doubled back on his own trail. He used every trick he had learned in his combat training. But he was getting slower. The exhaustion was catching up to him. On the 3rd morning, he stumbled on loose rocks and fell badly. Pain shot through his left ankle. He bit down on his arm to keep from crying out. When he stood, the ankle would not hold his weight properly. Twisted, maybe sprained, bad, but not broken. "Papa, you're hurt," Hana said. Her face was pale with worry. "I'm fine," Jiho lied. He wrapped the ankle with strips torn from his shirt. It helped, but every step sent sharp pain up his leg. They were moving slower now, much slower, and Jiho could feel the Velnar getting closer. He could sense them the way a hunted animal senses wolves. They were tightening the circle, running out of places to hide. That afternoon, Jiho made a decision. He found a deep cave hidden behind a waterfall. Inside was a narrow tunnel that his children could squeeze through, but adults could not. It led to a small chamber. Safe. Hidden. "You 3 stay here," Jiho said. "Don't make any noise. Don't come out until I call for you." "No," Hana said immediately. "No, Papa, don't leave us. I have to lead them away. If they find this cave with all of us inside, we're trapped." "But if I draw them off, you'll be safe." "Papa, please." Minho grabbed his father's hand. Even Suji seemed to understand something was wrong. She started crying. Jiho hugged all 3 of them at once. He breathed in the smell of their hair, memorized the weight of their bodies against his. "I love you," he said, "more than anything in the universe. Remember that. Always remember that." "Papa, no." Hana was crying now, too. "Don't go." But Jiho pulled away. He left them most of the remaining food and water. He kept only the pulse pistol. Then he left before his courage failed him. Behind him, he could hear his children crying. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. Jiho limped away from the cave. He made sure to leave an obvious trail, broken branches, footprints in soft dirt. He wanted the Velnar to follow him, to chase him away from his children. If he died, at least they would be safe for a while longer. The sun was setting when he saw her. A Velnar warrior stood blocking his path. She was tall, maybe 6.5 feet. Her armor gleamed in the fading light. In her hand was an energy blade, already activated and glowing blue. Jiho raised his pulse pistol. His hand was shaking from exhaustion and pain. The warrior did not move. They stood there, human and alien, as the last light faded from the sky. Behind him, Jiho heard a sound that made his blood freeze. Small footsteps, running. A child's voice calling, "Appa!" His children had followed him. They had not stayed hidden. They were running toward him, toward danger, toward the Velnar warrior with the glowing blade. Everything slowed down. Jiho turned. He saw Suji running with her arms out. Hana was chasing her, trying to catch her. Minho was frozen in fear. Jiho looked back at the warrior. Her blade was raised. Her eyes were locked on his children. Kira's blade hummed in her hand. The human man stood before her, injured and exhausted. His weapon was raised, but his arm trembled. One shot from that primitive pulse pistol would not penetrate her armor. She could end this in seconds. Her mission would be complete. She had tracked him here with purpose and patience. She had studied his patterns. She knew he would sacrifice himself to protect something. Now she understood what. The cave behind him held his offspring. He had led her away from them. A tactical error born from emotion. Kira prepared to strike. She calculated the angle. One swift motion would separate his head from his body. Clean, efficient. She had performed this action hundreds of times in training and dozens of times in real combat. It was simple muscle memory. But then she saw his face. He was not looking at her. His eyes were focused on something behind her. The expression on his face made her pause. It was not the fear of death. It was something else. Something desperate and terrible and completely foreign to her experience. Kira heard footsteps, small, running footsteps, a child's voice crying out. "Appa!" She turned. 3 small humans were running toward them. The smallest one, barely more than an infant, was in front. She ran with her arms stretched forward, tears streaming down her face. Behind her, an older female child was chasing, trying to catch her. A male child stood frozen several feet back, his face white with terror. The small one reached Kira first. She collided with Kira's leg and wrapped her tiny arms around the armor plating. Kira looked down in shock. The child was crying and saying words in human language. "Appa, Appa, don't leave, please." The older female child reached them and tried to pull the small one away. "Suji, no, come here." But the little one held on tight to Kira's leg. Kira stood frozen. Her blade was still raised. Her target was right there, injured, unarmed effectively, distracted by his offspring. This was the perfect moment to strike. She had been trained for exactly this situation. Eliminate the target, eliminate witnesses, complete the mission. But her hand would not move. The blade stayed raised in the air, humming its deadly song, but her arm felt locked in place. She looked down at the small human clinging to her leg. The child could not be more than 4 cycles old. She had dark hair that fell in messy waves around her face. Her eyes were huge and wet with tears. She was looking up at Kira with complete trust. "Are you lost?" the child asked. Her voice was small but clear. "My Appa helps lost people." The words made no sense to Kira. She was not lost. She was a hunter, a warrior, a weapon of the Velnar Empire. But this tiny human was looking at her like she was something else, something safe. The older girl finally pulled the small one away from Kira's leg. "I'm sorry," the girl said to Kira. She was crying too, but trying to be brave. "Please don't hurt my papa. Please. He's all we have." The human man, Jiho Park, moved between Kira and his children. He dropped his pistol. Both his hands were raised, palms forward, empty, surrendering. "Kill me," he said. His voice was rough with exhaustion. "I'm not asking you to spare me. I'm a soldier. I understand how this ends. But please, please give me 10 minutes. Let me send them back to the cave. Let them have 10 minutes where they don't have to watch their father die." Kira stared at him. The logic of his request broke against her training like water against stone. He was bargaining for time for his offspring to be traumatized later, instead of now. What difference did it make? Death was death. Witness or not, the outcome was the same. "Why?" The word came out of Kira's mouth before she could stop it. "Why do you not run? You could escape alone. Your survival probability increases by 73% without the offspring. Why do you stay with them?" Jiho Park looked at her like she had asked why he needed to breathe. "Because they're my children. They're everything to me. They slow you down. They consume your resources. They compromise your tactical position." Kira's training supplied the words automatically. "They are a weakness." "Yes," Jiho Park agreed. "They are my weakness. and my strength, and my reason for living. I can't explain it to you in a way that makes sense to a Velnar, but they are my children. I would die 1,000 times before I left them alone." Kira's blade wavered. Her hand was shaking now. This had never happened before. In 15 years of service, her hand had never shaken during a mission. The older girl was singing something, a soft melody in human language. She was holding the smallest child and rocking her gently. The small one had stopped crying and was listening to the song. The male child had moved closer and was holding his father's hand while staring at Kira with terrified eyes. "What is she doing?" Kira asked. The question felt stupid, but she had to know. "Singing a lullaby," Jiho Park said quietly. "Her mother used to sing it to her. Now she sings it to her baby sister when Suji is scared." "Why?" "Because it helps. Because it reminds Suji that she's loved, that she's safe." Jiho Park's voice cracked. "Or as safe as I can keep her anyway." Kira watched the older girl sing. The melody was simple but soothing. The small child's breathing had slowed. She was calming down. The male child was humming along quietly, and the human man was watching his offspring with an expression that Kira could not name. His face showed pain and love and desperate hope all mixed together. Something in Kira's chest felt tight, like her armor had suddenly become too small. She thought about the Velnar creches where she had been raised, cold white rooms, nutrient dispensers, educational programs. There had been no singing, no holding, no one to rock her when she was afraid. She had been told this was strength, that emotional attachment was weakness, that the Velnar way was superior because it produced perfect warriors unhindered by sentiment. But looking at this human family, Kira wondered, was it really weakness? Or was it something else? These humans were terrified and exhausted and facing certain death, but they stayed together. They comforted each other. They drew strength from their connections. Kira had always fought alone. She had comrades, but no bonds. She served the Empire, but for what purpose? She had never questioned before. There had never been a reason to question. But now, watching a father who would die for his children, watching children who ran toward danger to stay with their father, she felt something break inside her. It was not pain exactly. It was more like waking up, like opening her eyes after 15 years of sleep and seeing clearly for the first time. "Your name?" Kira said. "The small one. What is her name?" Jiho Park blinked in surprise. "Suji. Her name is Suji. And the others? Hana is 12. Minho is 8. Kira looked at each child. Hana still singing softly. Minho clutching his father's hand. Suji sucking her thumb and holding a worn stuffed animal. They were small, fragile. They would die so easily. One strike from her blade would end all of them. But Kira could not do it. Her training screamed at her. Her mission parameters were clear. Eliminate the target and all witnesses. Report success. Return to duty. Simple, clean, efficient. But her hand lowered the blade. Slowly, as if moving through thick liquid, the weapon came down. The blue glow reflected off the tear-stained faces of the children. "You have a choice," Kira heard herself say. "Surrender. Return to the colony. Accept Velnar rule. You will be assigned work duties. Your offspring will be sent to education centers. You will all live." "No." Jiho Park's voice was firm. "You'll separate me from my children. You'll raise them to be like you. I won't let that happen." "Then you choose death." "If that's the only alternative to losing them, yes." Kira stood silent. The wind moved through the trees. The last light was fading from the sky. Her squad was waiting for her signal. One word, and they would converge on this location. They would eliminate everyone. Quick, professional, complete. She looked at Suji. The child was falling asleep in her sister's arms, exhausted from crying. Her small hand clutched the stuffed rabbit like it was a lifeline. Kira remembered her words from before. "Are you lost? My appa helps lost people. Yes, Kira thought, I am lost, and I have been lost for my entire existence. She touched the communication device on her helmet. Her second officer answered immediately. Commander, do you require assistance? Negative, Kira said. Her voice was steady despite the chaos in her mind. Target eliminated. No survivors. I am continuing sweep of the area. Maintain perimeter. Understood, Commander. Kira closed the communication. She deactivated her energy blade. The blue glow died away, leaving only the dim light of approaching night. There is a valley, she said quietly. 17 kilometers northwest. Beyond our scanning range, there are caves and a water source. If you reach it, you can survive. Jiho Park stared at her. What? I'm giving you a choice that my people never gave me, Kira said. She pulled a small device from her belt and threw it to him. Medical kit, and this. She handed him a scanner. Use it to avoid our patrols. The frequencies are programmed. Why? Jiho Park's voice was barely a whisper. Why are you helping us? Kira looked at the three children, at the family that stayed together even in the face of death, at the love that made no tactical sense but was somehow more powerful than any weapon. Because your daughter asked if I was lost, Kira said, and I am. I have been lost for a very long time, maybe longer than you can imagine. But today, for the first time, I think I see a path. She turned to leave, then paused. Keep them safe, Jiho Park. What you have is rare, perhaps the rarest thing in the universe. Do not waste it. Then Kira walked away into the darkness, leaving behind a human family she should have killed but could not. Behind her, she heard the children crying, but this time the tears sounded different. Not fear, something else. Relief, maybe, or hope. Kira was not sure. She had never learned to recognize those sounds. Kira returned to her ship alone. Her squad was waiting at the perimeter, just as she had ordered. Vector approached her as she emerged from the tree line. Mission status? He asked. Complete, Kira said. The lie came easily, but something inside her felt wrong about it. She had never lied to a fellow Velnar before. Deception was not part of their training. Truth was efficient. Lies created complications. But if she told the truth, her squad would return to eliminate the family. So she lied, and the wrongness sat in her chest like a stone. Any complications? Vector asked. None. The target was neutralized. No witnesses remain. Vector nodded. He suspected nothing. Why would he? Kira had never failed a mission. She had never disobeyed an order. She was a perfect warrior, until today. On the ship, Kira went to her quarters. The room was small and bare. A sleeping pod, a weapons locker, a screen for mission briefings. This was all a Velnar warrior needed. Personal items were discouraged. Attachments to objects created weakness. Kira sat on the edge of her sleeping pod and stared at her hands. These hands had killed many beings. Humans, mostly, but others too. She had never questioned the necessity. Her targets were obstacles to the Empire's expansion. They were problems to be solved. She solved them efficiently. But tonight her hands felt different. They had held the energy blade above 3 small humans and could not strike. Even now, hours later, her fingers trembled slightly. She clenched them into fists to make it stop. A memory surfaced. Not a memory exactly, because Velnar did not remember their births. The process was chemically suppressed, but something older than memory. A feeling. Warmth. A heartbeat that was not her own. Arms that held her just for a moment before the state workers took her away. Kira had been born in Creche Facility 7. She knew this from her file. She had been genetic combination 4701. 2 donors she would never meet contributed their material to create her. The best traits selected, the rest discarded. She was designed to be a warrior from the moment of conception. After birth, she was placed in a nutrient pod, fed by machines, monitored by computers. At age 2, she began physical training. At age 4, weapons training. At age 6, combat simulation. By age 10, she had killed her first live target, a prisoner who had volunteered for death. The Velnar were efficient even in their executions. Nothing was wasted. Kira had excelled at everything. Top of her training cohort, perfect scores on tactical assessments, zero hesitation in combat situations. She became a commander at 20 cycles, earned decorations for successful campaigns. She was exactly what the Velnar system intended to create. So why did she feel hollow? The question had started small years ago. Little thoughts during quiet moments. What was the purpose of conquest? What happened after the Empire controlled everything? What did warriors do when there were no more wars to fight? Kira had pushed these thoughts away. They served no purpose. A warrior did not need purpose beyond the mission. The Empire provided direction. Obedience provided meaning. But tonight, the questions roared back stronger than ever. She had seen a human father willing to die for his offspring. She had seen children who ran toward danger to stay with their parent. She had felt a small hand grip her armor with complete trust. What did the Velnar have that was equivalent? What would make a Velnar warrior hesitate? What would make them choose something other than the mission? Kira accessed her computer terminal. She pulled up files on human family structures. The information was meant for tactical analysis. Know your enemy, understand their weaknesses, exploit their attachments. But Kira read differently now. She learned about human reproduction, how offspring were carried inside the female donor for 9 months, how birth was painful and dangerous, how human parents then spent years raising their offspring directly, teaching them, protecting them, loving them. The files called this inefficient. Human offspring required constant care for over 15 cycles before becoming independent. They demanded resources, time, and emotional energy. From a purely logical standpoint, the Velnar method was superior, but the files also noted something interesting. Human soldiers fought harder when protecting their families. They showed increased determination, creativity, and willingness to sacrifice. Units with family motivation outperformed units fighting for abstract concepts. The conclusion in the file was simple. Humans were dangerous when their families were threatened. Recommend eliminating family structures to reduce combat effectiveness. Kira closed the file. She thought about Jiho Park standing between her and his children, weaponless, injured, facing certain death, and still refusing to run. That was not weakness. That was a kind of strength the Velnar had bred out of themselves. Over the next few days, Kira could not stop thinking about the family. She wondered if they reached the valley safely, if they found shelter, if the children were still afraid. She checked her scanner reports obsessively, looking for thermal signatures in the northwest region, but that area was beyond standard patrol range. The family had vanished. Good, she thought. Stay vanished. Stay safe. The thought surprised her. She was hoping for the survival of humans she was supposed to have eliminated. This was not just disobedience. This was betrayal of the Empire. If discovered, she would be executed. Her name would be erased from records. She would become nothing. But somehow, that seemed less terrible than the alternative. The alternative was a small girl named Suji asking, "Are you lost?" and Kira having to say no before killing her. Kira began to observe other humans in the colony, secretly, during her off-duty hours. She watched from a distance as families gathered in their homes. She saw parents holding small offspring. She saw older siblings teaching younger ones. She saw humans embracing when they were sad, laughing when they were happy, crying when they were hurt. The Velnar did none of these things. When a Velnar was injured, they reported to medical treatment. When training was complete, they returned to quarters. When a mission succeeded, They prepared for the next one. There was no joy, no celebration, no comfort in pain, just duty, always duty, forever duty. One evening, Kira saw something that made her stop. A human male was sitting with a small child. The child was crying. The male held the child against his chest and rocked slowly. He was singing, just like Hana had sung to Suji. The child's crying gradually stopped. The small body relaxed, and the male kept holding the child long after the tears dried. Kira watched until they went inside. Then she went back to her ship and sat in her quarters. She tried to access memories of being held, of being comforted. But there was nothing, just the cold efficiency of the creche, the mechanical feeding systems, the automated educational programs. For the first time in her life, Kira felt something that might have been grief. Not for anything she had lost, because she had never possessed it to begin with, but for what she might have been. What all Velnar might have been if they had chosen a different path centuries ago. The Velnar had decided that emotion was weakness, that attachment created vulnerability. That perfect warriors needed to be tools, not people. And for generations they had bred themselves toward that goal, removing empathy, suppressing connection, creating soldiers who could kill without hesitation. But they had lost something in the process, something that made life worth living. Kira was beginning to understand what that was. She pulled up historical files. The Velnar had not always been this way. Thousands of years ago, they had families. Parents raised their own offspring. There were bonds between individuals. But as their civilization expanded and warfare became constant, the leadership decided that emotional attachments were hindering military effectiveness. The creche system was implemented gradually, first for warrior class only, then for all classes. Within 5 generations, no Velnar had ever experienced family bonds. It became normal, efficient. The empire grew stronger. But at what cost? Kira thought about her genetic donors. Were they warriors too? Did they ever wonder about the offspring they created? Or had they been fully conditioned to not care? She would never know. The files did not contain that information. Genetic donors were anonymous. The connection was irrelevant. Only the product mattered. Kira was the product. A perfect weapon, emotionless, efficient, obedient. Except she had failed her mission. She had let targets escape. And she did not regret it. That realization crystallized everything. She did not regret it. Even knowing the consequences if discovered, she would make the same choice again. She could not have killed those children. Something in her, buried deep beneath layers of conditioning, had refused. Maybe that something had always been there. Maybe it existed in all Velnar, hidden and suppressed. Maybe they were not as different from humans as the Empire claimed. Maybe they had simply forgotten how to be anything other than warriors. Kira made a decision. She would not forget Ji-Ho Park and his children. She would not pretend the encounter meant nothing. Instead, she would remember. She would observe. She would question. And when the time came, when she understood enough, she would act. She did not know yet what form that action would take. But something had changed inside her that night in the forest. A crack had formed in her conditioning. Light was seeping through. Kira looked at her hands again. They were steady now. The trembling had stopped. These hands had chosen mercy once. Perhaps they could choose it again. Perhaps they could choose to build instead of destroy, to protect instead of eliminate, to connect instead of isolate. It would not be easy. The Empire would not change quickly. But change had to start somewhere, with someone. Maybe it started with a warrior who could not kill 3 children. Maybe it started with a question asked by a 4-year-old girl. Are you lost? Yes, Kira thought, I am lost. But I am beginning to find my way. 3 months passed. Ji-Ho and his children survived in the hidden valley. The location was exactly as Kira had promised. Caves for shelter, a stream for water, even wild plants that were safe to eat. It was not home, but it was safe. Hana had learned to hunt small animals with traps Jiho taught her to make. Minho kept watch and warned them when aircraft passed overhead. Even Suji had jobs now. She collected dry wood for their fires and picked berries from bushes near the cave entrance. They were together. That was what mattered. But Jiho thought about Kira often, the Velnar warrior who had spared them. He did not understand why. Her entire being had been focused on killing him. He had seen it in her eyes, the cold calculation, the complete absence of hesitation, until she looked at his children. Then something had changed. Something had broken through whatever made her a perfect killer. He wondered if she was still alive, if her choice to spare them had been discovered. He hoped she was safe. Strange to hope for the safety of someone who had hunted you. But Kira had given his children life. That created a debt Jiho could never repay. Meanwhile, on the Velnar command ship, Kira's internal struggle deepened. She performed her duties perfectly, led patrols, filed reports, eliminated any human resistance that emerged. To her superiors, nothing had changed. Commander Kira was as efficient as ever, but inside, everything was different. Each night she returned to her quarters and accessed more files about human culture. She watched archived footage of human families. She studied their customs, their values, their bonds. The more she learned, the more hollow her own existence felt. She had purpose, yes, but was purpose enough? She had duty. But who was she serving? An empire that had forgotten how to be anything other than conquerors. 4 months after the encounter, Kira requested a meeting with the fleet administrator. This was unusual. Commanders did not typically request meetings with administrators. They received orders and executed them. But Kira needed answers. The administrator was an old Velnar named Tekmor. He had served the Empire for 40 cycles. His body showed the signs, scars from old battles, replacement joints in his legs, but his mind was still sharp. "Commander Kira," he said when she entered, "your record is exemplary. What requires discussion?" "I have questions about the creche system," Kira said. She spoke carefully. This was dangerous ground. Tekmor's eyes narrowed slightly. "What questions? Why do we remove offspring from genetic donors at birth? What is the strategic advantage?" "The advantage is obvious. Emotional attachment creates hesitation in combat. Warriors who care about specific individuals are compromised. The creche system produces superior soldiers. But humans fight harder for their families. I have observed this personally. Their attachment creates motivation, not weakness." Tekmor studied her. "Have you been compromised, Commander?" "No," Kira lied. "I am conducting tactical analysis, understanding our enemy's psychology. The humans are not our enemy because they are strong. They are our enemy because they occupy space that should belong to the Empire. Their psychology is irrelevant. We conquer them regardless of how they feel about it." "But what happens after we conquer everything?" Kira asked. The question came out before she could stop it. "When there are no more worlds to take, what purpose do warriors serve then?" Tekmor was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quieter. "That question is above my authority. I simply execute the expansion directives, as should you." "Have you ever wondered what it would be like?" Kira pressed. "To know your genetic donors, to have connections beyond duty?" "No," Tekmor said firmly, "because I was raised correctly, as were you. These questions suggest exposure to human sentiment. I recommend psychological reconditioning." Kira felt ice in her veins. Reconditioning. That meant memory wipes, chemical adjustments. She would forget everything, including 3 children and their father, including the feeling of a small hand trusting her. "That will not be necessary," Kira said. "I apologize for wasting your time with philosophical questions." See that it does not happen again." Techmore dismissed her. Kira left the meeting understanding two things. First, her questions were dangerous. Second, she was not the only one with doubts. She had heard something in Techmore's voice when he said he simply executed directives, a weariness, a hint of uncertainty. Maybe others questioned too. Maybe the perfect Velnar conditioning was not as perfect as the Empire claimed. She began to look for signs. She watched other warriors. Most showed nothing. They were what they had been trained to be: efficient, emotionless, complete. But a few showed cracks, a moment of hesitation before executing a prisoner, a glance at a human family before destroying their home. Small things, almost invisible. But there, Kira started taking risks. She spoke to these warriors privately, carefully, never stating her doubts directly, just asking questions, sharing observations, seeing how they responded. Some reported her for suspicious behavior. She had to be more careful. But others listened. They had questions, too. They had noticed inconsistencies in their training. They had wondered about the purpose of endless conquest. Over the next 2 months, Kira identified 7 warriors who might be receptive to change. It was not many, but it was a start. Then disaster struck. A human resistance cell emerged in the colony. They had salvaged weapons from a crashed Velnar transport. They ambushed a patrol and killed 3 warriors. The fleet administrator ordered complete retaliation. Every human in the sector where the attack occurred would be executed. No exceptions. Over 200 humans, including families, including children. The order made tactical sense. Harsh punishment discouraged future resistance. It was standard Velnar procedure. Kira had carried out similar orders before without question. But now she could only think of Suji, of Hana, of Minho, of human children who would die because adults made the decision to fight back. She thought about Jaiho Park, who would have fought back if his children were threatened, who had faced certain death rather than abandoned them. Were these resistance fighters any different? They were protecting their families too. Kira stood in the briefing room while the administrator explained the mission. 12 commanders would lead the operation, each assigned a sector to clear, quick, efficient, complete. "Are there questions?" the administrator asked. Kira's hand moved to her communicator. She could refuse. She could question the order. She could expose her doubts publicly. But that would change nothing. They would replace her, execute the order anyway, and she would die having accomplished nothing. Or she could accept the mission and then make a different choice. "No questions," Kira said. That night, she contacted the 7 warriors she had identified. She sent them encrypted messages, not orders, just coordinates, just a time, and a simple question. "Are you willing to see a different path?" 5 responded. They agreed to meet. 2 did not respond. Kira had to trust they would not report her. It was a terrible risk. The 5 met in an abandoned storage facility. They were young warriors, none older than 15 cycles of service. They looked at Kira with uncertainty. She was a superior officer. This meeting violated protocol. "I am going to tell you something that will sound like treason," Kira said. "If any of you wish to report me, I understand. But hear me first." They waited. She continued. "I spared a human and his 3 offspring 4 months ago. I was ordered to eliminate them. Instead, I helped them escape." Shock showed on their faces. This was beyond protocol violation. This was complete betrayal of mission parameters. "Why?" one asked. Her name was Sira. She was a young commander, only 6 cycles of service. "Because I could not kill children," Kira said simply. "My training said to strike. My orders demanded it, but something inside me refused. And in that moment of refusal, I realized we have been lied to." "What lie?" asked another. His name was Roll. "That we are complete. that we are perfect, that emotional attachment is weakness. Kira's voice was steady. But we are not complete. We are empty. We conquer worlds but have no understanding of what makes life worth living. We eliminate families but have no concept of what we are destroying. This is dangerous talk, Sira said. But she did not leave. She stayed and listened. Tomorrow we execute over 200 humans, Kira said, including offspring, children younger than 4 cycles. We will kill them efficiently, follow our orders, complete our mission, and feel nothing. That is what warriors do, Rawl said. But his voice was uncertain. Is it what we should do? Kira asked. Or is it just what we have been trained to do? The Velnar were not always like this. We chose to become emotionless. We can choose to be something else. You are suggesting rebellion, another warrior said. His name was Dek. I am suggesting awareness, Kira corrected. I am not asking you to refuse the mission tomorrow. That would be suicide. But I am asking you to see what we are doing, really see it. Not through the lens of training, but as beings capable of choice. They sat in silence. Minutes passed. Finally, Sira spoke. I had a moment, she said quietly. 3 weeks ago, I was clearing a human dwelling. A female human held a small offspring and begged me to spare it. I struck anyway, followed orders. But afterward, I could not stop thinking about the sound the female made. It was grief, pure grief. And I felt something, not much, just a small crack in my conditioning. And I hated myself for feeling it. That crack is not weakness, Kira said. That crack is your true self, the self the Empire tried to erase. What do you want from us? Rawl asked. I want you to remember tomorrow, to see what we do, and to decide if it is what you want to be. Kira stood. I cannot order you to change. Change must come from within. But I can offer you the truth. You are not complete. You are not perfect. But you are more than weapons. You are beings capable of choosing your own path. She left them there. She did not know if they would report her. She did not know if they would change. But the seed was planted. That was all she could do. The next morning, the execution mission began. Kira led her assigned sector. She watched warriors eliminate humans efficiently. She saw families die. She saw children die. And she saw the other commanders complete their duties without hesitation. But when her squad reached the last dwelling, Kira stopped. Inside were 5 humans, 2 adults, 3 offspring. Squad, fall back, Kira ordered. Commander? Vectar questioned. I said fall back. Give them 5 minutes to evacuate. That violates mission parameters. I am aware. Fall back. Her squad hesitated. Then they obeyed. Kira went to the dwelling door and activated the communication system. You have 5 minutes, she said in human language. Run north. There is a transport waiting. Use it. There was no transport. But the humans would run. They would live a few hours longer. Maybe they would find a way to survive. It was not much. But it was something. A small crack in the perfect Velnar machine. Behind her, Sira's voice came over the communication channel. Commander Kira, my sector has been cleared. No survivors remain. The words were correct, but Kira knew the truth. Sira was lying too. She had made the same choice. One by one, the 5 commanders reported completion. All of them reported 0 survivors. But Kira checked the thermal signatures later. Dozens of humans had escaped from their sectors. Dozens who should have died, but lived. 5 warriors had chosen differently. It was not enough to change the Empire. Not yet. But it was a beginning. 5 years later, the Velnar Empire faced something it had never encountered before. Internal resistance, not from conquered species, from Velnar themselves. It started small. Warriors questioning orders, commanders allowing prisoners to escape. Small acts of mercy that spread like cracks in ice. The Empire tried to suppress it. Executions, reconditioning, propaganda campaigns about the perfection of their system. But the cracks kept spreading. Because once warriors started questioning, they could not stop. Once they saw humans protecting their families, they wondered why Velnar had abandoned theirs. Once they felt the stirring of suppressed emotions, they wanted more. Kira became a symbol, though she never intended to. She continued her duties publicly, but privately she built a network. Warriors who believed the Empire had lost its way, who wanted to remember what it meant to be more than weapons. The movement had no name, no official structure, just individuals making small choices, sparing when they could, questioning when it was safe. Teaching each other that feeling was not weakness. The Empire's response was brutal. They identified and executed hundreds of suspected dissidents. They implemented stricter conditioning protocols. They tried to crush any hint of emotional attachment, but they could not crush an idea. And the idea was simple. The Velnar had chosen to become emotionless. They could choose to become something else. On New Haven, Jiho and his children had rebuilt their lives. The colony was under Velnar occupation, but life continued. Jiho worked as a maintenance technician. His children attended the occupation's education centers during the day, but returned home each night. They were together. That was what mattered. Hana was 17 now. She helped her father care for her younger siblings and studied medicine. She wanted to help people the way doctors had tried to help her mother. She wanted to save lives. Minho was 13. He had grown tall and serious. He studied engineering like his father. But he also wrote poetry in secret, filling notebooks with words about hope and resistance and the strength of families. Suji was 9. She barely remembered their flight into the mountains, but she remembered the story her father told, about the alien warrior who could have killed them but chose mercy instead, about the moment when everything changed. "Do you think she's still alive?" Suji asked one evening. They were sitting together after dinner as they always did. Family time. The Velnar allowed 2 hours each night for family time. It was a recent policy change, small but significant. "I don't know," Jiho said honestly. "What she did was dangerous. If they found out, she would have been punished." "I hope she's okay," Suji said. "She was nice. She had sad eyes." Sad eyes? Jiho had not noticed that. He had been too focused on the blade she held. "Very sad," Suji confirmed. "Like she was lost and didn't know how to find home." Out of the mouths of children, Jiho thought. His youngest daughter had seen something in the Velnar warrior that he had missed. Not just a killer showing unexpected mercy, but a person in pain, searching for something she could not name. That night, Jiho received a message. It was unsigned and arrived through encrypted channels. Most colonists did not receive encrypted messages, but Jiho still had contacts from his military days, people who remembered him, people who knew he could be trusted. The message was simple. "She wants to speak with you, if you are willing. Tomorrow, 2300 hours, old coordinates, come alone." Jiho knew immediately who she was. There was only one she from his past who mattered. Only one whose face he saw sometimes in his dreams, holding an energy blade but unable to strike. He should not go. It could be a trap. But something in him needed to see her again. Needed to know if the warrior who spared his children had survived the consequences of mercy. The next night, Jiho left his children sleeping and hiked into the mountains. The old coordinates were the valley where Kira had sent them 5 years ago. It took him 3 hours to reach it. The caves were empty now. They had moved back to the colony after the occupation stabilized. But someone waited there. A figure in Velnar armor, standing near the cave entrance. Moonlight reflected off the metal plating. Kira looked exactly as he remembered, tall, still, dangerous, except her eyes were different. 5 years ago, They had been empty. Cold calculation behind a warrior's mask. Now they showed something else. Weariness, hope, and yes, as Suji had said, sadness. "Jiho Park," Kira said. "You came. You spared my children," Jiho replied. "I owed you this much." They stood in silence. Two beings who should have been enemies, who had faced each other over life and death, who had each made choices that changed everything. "Why did you want to see me?" Jiho asked, finally. "To tell you what you started," Kira said. "That night, when I could not kill your children, something broke inside me. Or perhaps it broke free. I do not know which. But I began to question everything I had been taught. And," Jiho waited, "and I am not alone. There are others, many others, Velnar warriors who have begun to see what we lost when we chose to become weapons." Kira's voice held emotion now. Not much, but it was there. "We are trying to change the Empire from within. It is slow, dangerous, but it is happening." "Because of my children?" Jiho could not believe it. "Because of what they represented. Love, family, connection, things we bred out of ourselves because we believed they were weakness. But you showed me they are strength. The strength to choose who you protect. The strength to choose what matters." Kira paused. "Your daughter asked if I was lost. She was right. I was lost. My entire species is lost. But we are beginning to find our way." Jiho felt tears in his eyes. He wiped them away roughly. "My children are safe because you chose mercy. If your actions helped others choose the same, then good. The universe needs more mercy." "There is something else," Kira said. "The Empire is changing policies. Small things. Allowing family time, reducing separation protocols in the creches, permitting warriors to know their genetic donors. It will take generations to undo what we have done to ourselves. But it is beginning." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I wanted you to know. That night in the forest changed more than just 5 lives. It started something larger. Your choice to protect your children, even at the cost of your life, showed me what we lost, and I have spent 5 years trying to help others see the same." Kira reached into her armor and pulled out a data chip. She handed it to Jiho. "These are locations of human resistance cells that the Empire plans to eliminate, and these are warriors in my network who will allow them to escape instead. Use this information carefully. Save who you can." Jiho took the chip. His hand shook slightly. This was treason on both sides. If either of them were caught, execution would be immediate. "Why are you risking this?" he asked. "Because I learned from humans that some things are worth the risk," Kira said. "Family, freedom, choice. These are not weaknesses. They are what make life worth living. The Velnar forgot that. You reminded me." She turned to leave. Jiho called after her. "Wait. My children ask about you sometimes, especially Suji. She wants to know if you are okay." Kira stopped. She did not turn around, but Jiho saw her shoulders tighten. "Tell her I am finding my way home. Slowly, but I am finding it." "Will you tell me your real name?" Jiho asked. "Not your warrior designation, your actual name, the one your parents gave you." Kira was silent for so long that Jiho thought she would not answer. Then, quietly, she spoke. "I do not have one. Velnar offspring are not named by genetic donors. We are assigned designations. But if I could choose a name, I think I would choose something that means hope. Does your language have such a word?" "Hee-mang," Jiho said. "It means hope in Korean." "Hee-mang," Kira repeated. The word sounded strange in her clicking Velnar accent. "Yes, that is what I would be called, if I could choose." She walked away into the darkness. Jiho watched until she disappeared. Then he hiked back down the mountain, carrying information that would save human lives. and carrying a story to tell his children. When he returned home, Suji was awake. She sat at the window, looking out at the stars. "You went to see her," Suji said. It was not a question. "How did you know?" "You had the look. The one you get when you think about that night." Suji came to her father and hugged him. "Is she okay?" "She is finding her way home," Jiho said, repeating Kira's words. "Just like she promised." "Good," Suji said. "Everyone deserves to find home." Over the next 5 years, the Velnar Empire changed. Not quickly, not easily, but steadily. The creche system was reformed. Warriors were permitted to maintain relationships. Genetic donors were allowed to know their offspring. Conquests slowed as internal restructuring took priority. Some called it weakness. They said the empire was losing its edge, its purpose, its identity, but others called it evolution. They said the empire was becoming something better, something that could exist, not through conquest, but through cooperation. Not through suppression of emotion, but through recognition that emotion was part of being alive. The change started with one warrior who could not kill 3 children. But it spread because it addressed a hunger that every Velnar secretly felt. The hunger for connection, for meaning beyond duty, for the simple warmth of belonging to someone who would miss you if you were gone. Humans had always understood this. It was their greatest weakness and their greatest strength. They loved fiercely and protected ferociously. They built families and communities. They sacrificed for each other. They chose connection over isolation. And now, slowly, the Velnar were learning to do the same. 10 years after that night in the forest, Jiho received another message. This one was not encrypted. It was a simple text, sent openly through standard channels. "Thank you for showing me what we lost. My name is Kira. Tell your children they saved more than one life that day. They saved an entire species from forgetting how to be alive." Jiho gathered his children. Hana was 22 now, working as a doctor. Minho was 18, an engineer helping rebuild the colony. Suji was 14, studying to be a teacher. They sat together around the evening fire, just as they had for years. Family time was sacred. They never missed it. "I have something to tell you," Jiho said. "A story about a warrior who learned to be more than a weapon. About children who showed an empire what it means to be human. About the day you saved a life without knowing it." He told them about Kira's message, about the changes in the Velnar Empire, about how one moment of mercy had rippled outward, touching thousands of lives. When he finished, Suji smiled. "I knew she would be okay. She just needed to find home." "We all need that," Hana said quietly. "Home is not a place. It is people who love you." "Then we are always home," Minho added, "as long as we are together." Jiho looked at his children. They had grown so much, survived so much, but they were still together, still a family, still proof that love was stronger than any weapon. The Velnar had thought emotional bonds were weakness. They had been wrong. Bonds were what made beings worth saving, what made life worth living, what gave meaning to existence beyond simple survival. Humanity had always known this truth. They loved because they understood that love was not a vulnerability to be exploited. It was armor against despair. It was weapon against emptiness. It was the reason to keep fighting when everything else failed. And now, thanks to one warrior who could not kill 3 children, the Velnar were learning it too. They were learning that you could be strong and still care. That you could be a warrior and still have a family. That duty and love were not opposites, but partners. The universe was vast and cold and often cruel. But in that darkness, there were moments of connection. Moments when beings chose mercy over duty. When they chose love over orders. when they chose to be more than what they were designed to be. Those moments changed everything. They started with 3 children and 1 father, standing together while an alien warrior decided what kind of being she wanted to be. And they ended with an empire remembering what it meant to be alive. Not just existing, not just conquering, but living, connected, complete. That was humanity's strength, not their weapons or tactics or technology, but their stubborn, fierce, beautiful insistence on loving each other even when the universe told them it was weakness. They loved anyway. And in loving, they were invincible. Jiho held his children close as the fire burned low. Outside, Velnar ships patrolled the sky. But they were different ships now, crewed by different warriors who went home to families after their shifts, who held offspring and sang lullabies and chose connection over isolation. The universe was changing, slowly, imperfectly, but changing. And it had started with a small voice asking a simple question. Are you lost? Yes, the warrior had been lost. Her entire species had been lost. But now they were finding their way home, following the example of humans who understood that home was not a place. It was the people you loved, the people who made life worth living. That was the lesson Jiho's children had taught an empire, and it was a lesson that would echo through the stars for generations to come. Love was not weakness. Love was everything.